Hey everyone, welcome to Dread No Mondays. Today we are here with Rebecca Potts, and we're excited to have her. Rebecca, thank you for taking the time to be here on this beautiful Saturday morning currently. And
Yeah, thank
Rebecca, if you
you.
wouldn't mind, if you wouldn't mind, just give a little bit of background about yourself. And you say you're an art teacher, and you also started a podcast.
Yeah, so I teach right now. I teach elementary art, and I'm an teaching artist. So that means I'm not really a certified teacher. I'm an artist that works for a nonprofit that sends artists into schools. And I've been doing this for over 10 years, teaching and kind of juggling this dual career of art and teaching and really trying to take both seriously. So I this year decided to start a podcast because I saw a lot of other art teachers who were really kind of doing the same thing, like juggling this desire to be a professional artist, this career as a professional artist with this career as a teacher, and really like loving their teaching as well, but not getting much respect as an artist because they were teaching younger students. So I wanted to highlight those people who really are serious about both careers. So my podcast interviews are teaching artists, and we just talk about art and teaching and how they overlap and kind of feed each other, how we're inspired by our students. So that's Teaching Artists podcast. But I wanted to talk today about, I've shared on my podcast that I identify as an introvert, and I'm nervous right now. I'm scared like every time I get in front of the mic, and I've started doing live talks with other artists on Instagram as well, and that's even more nerve-wracking because I'm on video as well, and I can't kind of go back and like edit any of it. So my sort of Monday is public speaking. And I wanted to just share here today how I've kind of gotten past that a little bit. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that intro. You
Yeah.
know, I for one had, honestly had no idea that nonprofit program even existed that you mentioned. So that's good news to share for others that might be interested in looking at an avenue or a vehicle to pursue that passion. You know,
Yeah.
I find it awesome that you're able to mix those two passions, and then podcasting, you can throw it all together and kind of make it work and complement each other. So thank you for sharing that. Um,
Yeah.
what initially, you said you wanted to help highlight those that kind of got pigeonholed because they're teaching younger, but what sparked the podcast versus, like a Facebook group or something different, kind of what led you towards the podcast?
Yeah, that's a good question. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I feel like for artists, it's a really good way to kind of consume information while we're working in our studios because we don't have to be looking at anything. We're just listening. So it feels different than reading or watching a video. I can, be focused on my artwork while I'm listening. And I was listening to so many podcasts, and a lot of them were talking about teaching and like tips and techniques with teaching art. And then also a lot were interviewing artists and sharing kind of their stories and like giving inspiration of their journey. But I didn't really see any kind of marrying those two things. Um, and so I guess it was just because I was like an avid podcast listener that I immediately kind of went towards that as a vehicle for highlighting these artists. Um, yeah, and I also know like there's a ton of teachers are all over Facebook, especially right now. There's a ton of Facebook groups, and I'm part of a lot of them, but I hadn't really thought of that as another idea. So maybe I should do more on Facebook.
So there you go. You can you could put your podcast on a Facebook group.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome that you took the initiative to step out of that. What helps you get in front of that microphone every time?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a little bit just practice, just continuing to come back and do it even though I'm nervous. For me, it also helps a lot to kind of have a script. Like when I interview people, I do have questions already written out, and I usually go a bit off script just because it's a conversation, but it really helps me to have that in front of me. It's almost like a safety blanket or something, where, you know, if I feel like I'm about to stumble, I can just look down at my paper and be like, okay, I know what to say now. um, but also, I feel like it helps um, to be like on video is harder to be just audio because I do most of my interviews just audio. I can almost like feel like it's just me or I'm just talking to a friend on the phone. That it's not, it makes it a little bit less scary. But I feel like those experiences also kind of build up that muscle of talking. So then it gets easier to do to do things on video and then eventually to do things in person. Um, yeah.
I like that, how just, sticking with it and not giving up will help you
Yeah.
usually help you get past all those hiccups, those struggles that you have.
Yeah.
What helps you when you're interviewing someone and they go way off script, or for example, like today, I don't go off a script.
Yeah. I know that's that's making me nervous right now. I'm like, what's he going to ask me? I don't have anything in front of me.
Neither do I. I don't
Yeah.
even know what I'm going to ask you next.
Um, I mean, I feel like on my podcast, I do go back and edit a bit. So that is also kind of like a little safety net. I'm like, well, if I stumble a whole bunch or just pause and don't know what to say, I can just cut that out. It's okay. It'll be fine. It'll give me more work to do. So I try to avoid that, but that definitely helps. And then also, I feel like it's partly also with age, that I'm in my 20s. I was so much more sort of nervous about, what do people think? And having this like idea that everybody's judging you, um, for what you say, and like, you yourself are your worst critic and you notice all the tiny little mistakes that you make, or the weird things about, oh god, there's a wrinkle here in this video or whatever, like silly things that really nobody else notices. So
Absolutely,
kind of
especially when you go back and
constantly.
do the editing.
Right. Yeah, it helps me though to constantly remind myself that like I'm my worst critic. Nobody else notices the way you did that nervous laugh or whatever thing it is that you have in your head as like this horrible thing that you're doing all the time. Yeah, so just kind of reminding myself it's okay. Like other people aren't as concerned about what you're doing and saying and wearing and all of that as you are.
Exactly. That's always hard to remember.
Yeah.
Is that you're your worst critic and you're doing better than you think you are. You give yourself credit for. You
Hmm.
know, a lot of times it's a lot just to turn the camera on, turn the microphone on.
Yeah.
Let's jump back to the art for a second. You mentioned a lot of teachers, artists get pigeonholed because they're teaching younger students.
Hmm.
How do you overcome that when you're talking to other artists or like the parents of those students or whatever? You're like, oh no, what are their parents going to think about what I'm teaching them, or
Mm.
what's so and so over here going to teach or think he teaches these people or whatever.
Yeah, I feel like with parents it's not as difficult for me. I mean I follow the standards and I feel very sort of confident about what I'm teaching. And so far, I've gotten lots of really great feedback. Part of it also is letting the parents, like giving parents opportunities to see not only what their kids are making, like the product, but also give them a chance to see the process. So I invite parents into the classroom to kind of see what's going on. And I have been shifting and like continue to shift my teaching towards a method called teaching for artistic behavior that is really, really focused on teaching kids how to be an artist and how to go through the creative process rather than, you know, giving them like, okay, we're going to draw a sunflower. First you draw a circle and then you draw this, like not a step-by-step like method where you're really the one coming up with the idea and then they're all making the same thing. It's really cookie cutter.
Mhm.
I'm really much more interested in teaching them, well, what ideas do you have? And how can you, if you don't have an idea, where can you find an idea? And then once you have that idea, what do you do with it? Like, how does some little spark in your mind become a work of art? What materials can you use, you know, going through the entire creative process. So they're coming up with an idea and then kind of figuring out how to bring that to life. And that has been just so engaging for the students. They love it and they're just like having so much fun, but also they're really learning, like they're internalizing all of the steps they need to take to create something, to really be an artist. So then when parents see that and see how their kids talk about what they're making, I feel like that just, you know, it's such rich evidence of the learning going on. But the other part of your question was how to talk with, I guess, other artists, and especially artists that teach like at the university level or that aren't teaching, that are really like their sole career is art. And that for me is much harder to kind of justify, like, why am I teaching kids, and or why am I teaching at all? Like, you can't make it as an artist, is that it? Or you couldn't get those university jobs? Like, it feels like this is kind of teaching younger students is thought of as the fallback when you like can't achieve the other aspects of an art career, which may be partially true. So that's part of what makes it like more difficult to talk about, I think. But I feel like just kind of trying to build up confidence in your own artwork, and art school, you know, gives you a very thick skin with critiquing your work. Um, and then now I feel like if I had the opportunity to teach at the university level or to stop teaching altogether, I'm not sure I would take it because I really love working with kids and they're so inspiring. Um, so yeah, I guess just talking about how teaching informs my art making and like enriches my life, really.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
want to start back with teaching the kids. Um, you mentioned that you're shifting your teaching methods, you know, and kind of helping them come up with the ideas, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's very powerful, very essential, you know, because it not only
Mm-hmm.
just in the art in the classroom, but it spills out into the rest of their life. You know, if they've got a career, they have an idea for a career, like, okay, what can I do this? Oh, what about this? Or, you know,
Yeah.
you can see it in the rest of their life, you know, manifest itself, whatever, in whatever career or um, pattern they choose, whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's phenomenal. And then going back to the other artists, you know, I think, you know, you can tell the difference usually if someone's teaching for the money or someone's teaching for the passion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can see where their passion is. If your passion's with the younger students and whatnot, then you could tell their heart's more into it and they're not just doing it for a paycheck. And
Mm-hmm.
then not only that, but you know, a lot of times there may be a single piece that gets sold, and you get some admiration for a while, but I don't understand the whole art world. But in my eyes, it's like you're the younger students, you're planting seeds in them, and then it's a whole garden of successive portraits of life that you're planting. You may not see it today, tomorrow, next week, but you got a whole garden versus one painting, one picture.
Yeah, I love that analogy. That's beautiful. Thinking of like the garden that's growing based on like my facilitating some kind of learning. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I school teachers, I don't think get enough credit for the hard work that they do.
Yeah.
Or
Especially
teachers.
right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see teachers for my kids and all the effort they put into it, and they need to be put on a pedestal, because they work so
Yeah.
hard behind the scenes.
Yeah. And right now I know in the spring I was doing distance learning, and I kept hearing this kind of feedback that like, oh, you're on vacation. Like teachers have such a break right now. And I was just like, this is way harder than being in the classroom with my kids. Like it's taking up way more of my time because I don't know how to use any of this technology. And like now I'm making the videos, but then also trying to edit them and then trying to respond to 5 million emails and stuff from teachers and parents and principals and everybody, and trying to figure out how to like see what they're making when they don't have access to all the technology, revamping all my lessons so that they can use a piece of cardboard and a pencil because that's all they have. Like it was such a daunting task and so much more time and effort than just going into the classroom to teach. Like teachers were all over this country were just really struggling, and it was crisis mode. And now I feel like a lot of us have spent the summer kind of figuring out technology and getting a lot better at it, but then also planning out, okay, how are we going to do this in whatever model we're in, if we're totally online or hybrid or going back to school really unsafely, and like how are we going to manage all this. So yeah, teachers definitely need a little pat on the back, some encouragement right now.
Yeah, just illustrating, what I said, that teachers do so much behind the work,
Mm-hmm.
scenes, work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That people don't even realize they're doing, or don't understand or comprehend what goes into it.
Mm-hmm.
They, I look behind you and see that's our work and stuff, and like, some paintings, some pretty lines, whatever. But you're like, no, you got all the canvas, you got to know when paint, you got to know all this prep work behind the scenes. And then something else you mentioned is trying to figure out how to learn the technology. I think that's awesome. People, um, people, if they don't quit, then they'll succeed.
Yeah.
If you were to just bury your head in the sand, you wouldn't get anywhere. But trial and error and making mistakes and just pushing through it, you get there, you figure it out, and then it becomes easier. Then it becomes a helpful tool versus a hindrance and a headache.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that idea of kind of pushing through and being okay with making mistakes, even in front of your students. And then I'm also kind of trying to like translate that to in front of whatever audience I have, whatever listeners or whoever I'm talking to, kind of like letting the perfectionist in me die a little bit. Like letting myself be okay with making mistakes as a model, like, showing kids or whoever's listening that it's okay to make a mistake. You just like continue learning, use that as an opportunity to learn. Like if you don't mess up, you never really learn. So those mistakes are actually good for you. and showing them how to handle it when there's a mistake is helpful.
Oh, it definitely helpful, not only for your audience, but especially for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you be more confident, knowing that, okay, I made a mistake. So what? Move on,
Yeah.
keep going. Maybe depending on what it is, be a little more mindful. Okay, last time I made this, I did this right before it. So if I do this, then I can kind of remember, okay, try not to do this, but
Right.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Again, just push through it and know that you're gonna make mistakes, and it's okay.
Yeah.
How do you help the students, overcome, oh, Bobby's artwork is so much better than me, or, I could never figure it out, or like you mentioned, sometimes they have very limited resources, I can't do it because I only have this.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help your students kind of get past that and feel like they're still equal part of the class, if you will?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do. I definitely talk a lot about like my best is different from your best, or Tommy's best or whoever. Like everybody has their own best work, and everybody's best is enough. Um, and if I am demonstrating anything, I never really finish it. I do it like upside down, and I kind of intentionally like don't make it look really really good, because I don't want them to be trying to live up to some standard that's like this artist who's had over 30 years and lots of art school to perfect what I'm doing. um, and then also just like encouraging each student individually with the teaching for artistic behavior kind of method. I think it really helps that they're not making sort of cookie cutter things. So if they look at their friends' work, or they see, now online, they see somebody else holding up a work on Zoom that they feel like is better than theirs, it's also going to be very different from theirs. Like that student wasn't starting with the same idea. They may not have been using the same materials. So when everybody's working on their very own idea, there's a lot less of that kind of comparison. They're really just focused on, well, this is what I'm trying to do. How do I make this the best that I can make it? Um, and then also just sharing a lot of inspirational artists. And one thing that is very important is sharing artists that look like my students, and ideally showing like videos of the artists talking, so the kids are really hearing about that artist from their own point of view. It's not me saying, this is an artist that I love because blah blah blah, and they did this and they believe this. It's more that they get to see the actual artist. um, and a term that I really like that's I think was used initially with like literature, with English education, is this idea of windows and mirrors. So ideally you're showing students, like in literature it would be characters or scenes that represent a window kind of outside of their life, outside of something that they recognize, but then also providing them with a character or scene, or for me, like an artist that represents a mirror of them. So somebody they really resonate with and that has similar experiences to them. So having both of those, windows and mirrors, to really inspire students and let them start to see themselves as part of this world of art, that you can grow up and be one of these people if you want to. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. A
Yeah.
couple things that, that really stood out to me while you were sharing that is, helping them understand, you know, don't compare your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 20.
Yeah.
There, help them remember and recognize that they've had more experience, they've been doing it longer and whatnot. So, of course, they're going to be better at it.
Mhm.
Um, And then two, the collaboration, like you said, someone's art piece may be different than someone else's, and it could be focused on as like an opportunity of collaboration. Like if someone drew, I'm going to use candy for a second. If someone drew, chocolate, and then this person drew peanut butter, and they come together, you got peanut butter, chocolate peanut butter, or Reese's buttercups.
Yeah.
Two ideas totally separate. Hey, that's a good idea. Let's put them together. It could be something really awesome and inspiring. And
Yeah, I love that.
I think that's really awesome that we can focus on the positivity of the situation. So I appreciate you pointing that out.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of artists that work with unconventional materials and recycled materials. So right now, I feel like that's really helpful to share. Or artists that work with just like a pencil on paper, a pen on paper, really basic things. So sharing inspiration of those artists that are working with like the materials that kids have at home. Yeah, so they're not intimidated thinking, oh, but I don't have paint and I don't have this or that. Yeah, and then the other thing that I was just thinking of is talking about making art as something that needs a lot of practice. That, like, I talk to the students about how if you're doing soccer or you're playing baseball or whatever sport that you're really into, were you the very best player the first day you went out on the field? Were you able to, hit the ball every time or whatever it is? Or did you have to go practice? And usually it's yeah, there's some very few people that are just naturally super talented, and that happens in art as well. But most of us really need to practice to get better and better. And it's exactly the same in art. You have to really train your eye and train your hand to create the work that you want to create.
Absolutely. I heard a statistic in baseball. Like some of the top players in baseball only hit like 30%.
Wow.
Don't quote me on that. That's just kind of something that's stuck in my head that I've heard. But it goes to your point, that they still mess up, and they're some of the best, or considered the best players in the world.
Yeah.
They only hit 30, 40, even 50% of the shots.
Right. Yeah. In the art world, like the advice that I've gotten from other artists that's been really helpful is kind of along the same lines. Like when you're creating work, create a lot, like make a lot of work, and probably only, 25-30% is going to be really like super strong gallery worthy work. The rest, there might be some that's like good enough that maybe somebody will want to buy it, but it's maybe not your best work. And then there's going to be a lot of just duds, and you think of them not as like trash, but as practice, as the stuff that got you to that best work. Like all those times you missed the ball were practice, were like ways for you to get better at like adjust your swing and get to the point where you're hitting it more often.
Exactly. Stepping stones.
Yeah.
Getting from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Exactly. This has been awesome. Rebecca, thank you. And one more question to finish up here. Where can people reach you if they wanted to learn more about art, about the programs you're with, about your podcast? Where can they reach you at?
Yeah. So I am mostly on Instagram. I do have websites as well. So my teachingartistpodcast.com is my podcast. And then on Instagram, it's just at Teaching Artist Podcast. And my personal artwork is at RebeccaPotts.com. Pretty simple, just my name. And my Instagram there is Potts Art, Potts Art. So yeah, they can reach out on either of those. There's, contact forms on the websites, and they can always like contact me through Instagram as well.
That's awesome. And then we'll also post those links in the comments as well with this.
Oh, thank you.
So again, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And it's been great interviewing you and learning about the different um, art and podcasts and things and experience that you had to share. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was really like a helpful and inspiring conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.